Hi, good afternoon and welcome to our charting webinar. So today I'm running through a bit of content with regards to charting. The focus is really to help anyone that doesn't really know where to start when it comes to charting. I'll be running through some of the basics and helping you to understand what it is you're actually looking at on the display. So on SharePad at the moment, I've obviously got a list of shares, but on the green side, I've got the chart view, and I'm just going to make a subtle change here. I've got the ATR on there, but I'm going to come back to that later, so I'm going to hide it for now. And I'm actually going to switch to a slightly different layout, and this is just because I want to have the chart on screen, but I also want a bit of visibility on the actual price data that the chart plots are derived from. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the three different chart types. Well, there's more than three, but these are what I'd consider the main chart types. So we'll start with the clothesline. So what you're seeing plotted on screen is a single price for each and every date, and that aligns with the official close price released by the stock exchange when the market closes. So you can see, for example, I'm just hovering the mouse over the close price for the 17th of November on Flutter Entertainment, so that's £116.90. So the close price, or the close line rather, is a really straightforward plot. You've just got a single price point plotted on the chart for each and every date. So I'm just hovering over that 116.9, and you can see previous day 119, so you can see that's plotted as well. And by obviously joining the dots, so to speak, that's how you arrive at this close line. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of chartists that will use either open, high, low, close bars, or OHLC bars, or candlesticks. So I'm just going to switch to OHLC. This is a different way of presenting the data. What you're seeing now is rather than one price plotted per day, you've actually got four prices plotted each day: the open, high, low and close price. You can see that on the price list I've put on the right hand side, obviously. So this is going to give you a bit more insight into what actually happened on the market each day with the share price. I'm just zooming in deliberately on the more recent activity. So we'll focus on the latest OHLC, which is for the 17th. And you can see that's where the share price started, or where it opened. So that's at 119.5. That's where it closed. So that's aligning with that 116.9. But then you've also got the extremes, so the highest price the share went to on the day and the lowest. So that's the vertical plot that you see on screen. So you get an immediate understanding with each day as to whether the share price actually went up or down on the day. So obviously on the 17th we see the share price went down. But if we look back in time, so I'm going back to the 10th of November, you can see on that particular day the share price actually went up. It opened and then closed higher than where it opened. And it aligns with the data you see on this green view. Opened at 124.2, closed at 125.1. Okay. I'm going to switch to candlesticks, which is again another way of presenting the data on screen. So much the same really, the same four price points are being used to plot each candle, but you now have an easier way perhaps of identifying the up and the down days. So I can see the black candles are where the share price went down, and the white candles are where they went up. What I'm going to show you now is how you can customize that if you need to apply a bit of color. So I can go to design, which is on the bottom corner of your price chart, and rather than using a single color for the coloring mode, you could use the conventional close relative to open. and that's your way of choosing your up colour and your down colour. So let's go for a nice green and red. There we go. So I'll just preview that and I'll just drag that dialog off to the side. My personal preference is to fill the rising candles. So I'll just do that as well. And there you go. So when you're looking at the price charts using these candlesticks, it will be very, very easy for you to spot the up and down days on first glance. Okay. The next thing I want to cover is how to control the actual date range, so the amount of data that you're looking at. So I know at the moment I'm looking at a 6-month chart, so I can see that because I have 6 months showing on the top left corner of my chart, and obviously I can see the actual date range along the x-axis, so I can see it goes right back to the 18th of May, so that's 6 months ago. So you've got a few ways of changing the date range. So first of all, use the other drop-down menu. From here you've got some preset ranges you can quickly choose from. So for example, there's a 1-year picture. We give you a very quick way of accessing the entire share price history, and that's going to be via the All button. So there you go, now I have a chart going right back to the year 2000. And I'll just toggle that back to a 1 year. Another very quick way of jumping to the full history would be a double click on the chart. So I'll just double click on the chart. You immediately snap to the full history. This is quite a nice way of working because you can subsequently double click a second time, and that's always going to jump back to that 1 year time frame or whatever you have selected. You've got a few other controls, so you can click and drag, and that's going to be a really good way of you highlighting a portion of the chart like so, and then as soon as you release the mouse button, the chart will zoom in on that selected portion of data. The double click control still remains available, and that's going to snap you back to, in this case, the 1 year. There's some lesser known controls on the chart. You can actually use some of your keyboard buttons. So for example, you've got the arrow keys on a standard keyboard, specifically the left and right arrow keys, and that's going to allow you to, I'm just hitting the left arrow key and that's just going to scroll back in time. Okay, and the right arrow just works in the opposite direction. The other thing you can do, if you hold down Shift, and while you hold down the Shift you hit the arrow keys, you can see you're scrolling back in time but you're keeping the latest data available, so you're actually just bringing in more data. And then you can obviously do that the other way with the opposite arrow key. Okay. And whenever you want to get back to where you were, again, just a quick double click on the chart, and that's going back to that 1 year display. Okay. Some additional controls, you can use the up and down arrow keys, and that's just going to have the same sort of effect, but it's going to make changes to your y-axis or your price axis rather than the date range. So I'm just pressing the up arrow key or the down arrow key, and likewise if you hold Shift while you're doing that, you can pan the chart right down or right up. So that's going to be quite handy if you're going to be setting some, perhaps drawing some lines quite far away from the price action. So you might need to scroll up to be able to access that area of the chart. Okay. So another part of charting is we're looking at the volume. So the volume is plotted as a histogram beneath the price action. So you've got these green bars along the bottom. So this is going to help you spot where there have been volume spikes in the market, so a surge in trading activity. This is a clear-cut volume spike in March of this year, and I can zoom in on that if I need to. Okay, so that was obviously on the 19th of March this year. What you're typically going to be looking for are obviously volume spikes, but you normally measure that against the average volume. The average that you use, is a matter of preference. If I go with the arbitrary default in the product, that's going to be a 25-day average. So to turn on that plot of the average, you're just going to go to that design button on the bottom of your chart, go to the volume tab, and that's where you can turn on that signal line. So you can see that's based on 25 periods, but in truth you can type any number you like in that field based on your own preference. Okay. So it's quite a subtle plot, but if I just zoom in on some of that more recent activity, there you go, it stands out a bit more. So you can see very quickly where we're seeing volume in excess of the average volume, and obviously that's based on a 25-day average. Okay. I'm just going to share with you some additional controls for the volume bars, specifically around how you can choose to colour them. So again, returning to that design button and ensuring I'm in the volume tab. We offer 4 colouring modes. A single colour is what you're currently seeing on screen, but you can actually colour it based on the volume being up or down. So that's comparing the volume against previous day. And then it's adhering to a green and red colouring scheme, but you can always change that. Okay. An alternative is the bar close plus or minus. So that's going to align with whether the share price went up or down. If I just bring that on screen, so you can see clear cut that the share price definitely went down there. So that volume bar is in red. Lastly, volume minus signal. So this aligns with you looking for those volume spikes when comparing the volume against that average. So you can see where the volume is below average, it's coloured red, where it's above, it's coloured green. So that's going to be a bit of a faster way of you spotting that. Okay, and I'm just going to put that back to the single colour for the time being. Great, so a big part of charting is moving averages, and I say that because it's just very popular. It's a very sensible thing to do because it's going to allow you to smooth the price action and get a sense for how that share price movement is trending over the long term, perhaps if you're going to use a long-term moving average. So at the moment on there I've got a 200 period moving average, so that's giving me that very long-term trend on screen. But of course you can add any type of moving average that you want or that you need. So if you're maybe taking a short-term or a mid-term approach, you might embrace something like a 10-period moving average perhaps. Very easy to customize your charts to add moving averages. There's your add button above the chart. This is your gateway to a whole host of features, including, as you see, moving averages and channels. I'm just going to click on that. So you gain visibility on the moving averages currently plotted. So obviously we've got the 200 period exponential. But if you want to plot another one, you just hit the create button and that will take you into this dialog. So you choose the type of moving average that you want to use. So we'll stick with a simple, and that will be based on 10 periods. Let me just OK that. So period size aligns with the type of data you're showing on the chart. So I know it's daily data. I can see that's written along the title of the chart. And if I go to the bars menu, I can see 1 day is selected in there. So I'm working with daily data, and therefore a 10-period moving average will be a 10-day moving average. So you can see that's a lot shorter term in comparison to that 200-day moving average. So you can see that follows the price action far more closely, but you're still getting that sense of how it's trending, but obviously over a much shorter time frame. Okay. if you plot a lot of different moving averages on your charts, you might start to struggle to identify what the different lines are, what moving averages are they. Obviously, if you go into add and then moving averages and channels, you're going to get that visibility. I recommend, however, utilizing the legend. That's very, very useful for this sort of thing. So in the add menu, the very first option there is the legend. You just click on that, hit the OK, there's your legend, and you've got that reminder on the left of your chart, so you know what each and every moving average line is. So those are actually clickable, so it's going to be your very fast way of editing the moving averages if you ever want to make changes to them. So, you know, for example, you could opt to turn on a Bollinger Band perhaps, and that's available by just turning on the channel. I'll just preview that so you can get an idea of what that would mean. Okay. Perfect. So not strictly charting, but one of the things you typically do with moving averages is perhaps look at where the price action crosses the moving average, and obviously you can see that very visually by looking at a chart. But just because it aligns with charting, I'm going to show you a very useful column that will help you spot that very quickly on the markets. Here we go. So this is my list display, and all I'm going to do is click on Add Column. I'm going to type or start typing the word moving average, and I'm just going to tell SharePad to give me a column that shows me that the price has crossed the moving average. I'm going to align with what's on my chart. So I'm going to go with a 10-day moving average, and I want to know about where the price has crossed above the moving average. You can choose either a crossing above or below, and I'll embrace a 5-day look back on that. So there we go. So a tick on London Stock Exchange Group. So let's look at the chart, and embracing that 5-day look back, we can see there it is, the price action crossing above that moving average within the last 5 days. Okay, I'm going to move on to how to draw lines on the charts. So there's a few options here. So you can draw lines freehand. You just hold down Shift on your keyboard, and then you click and drag, and that's me drawing a line. Okay, wherever you want that line to be, obviously just position it. I've released the mouse button. I'm no longer holding Shift. You can see the end points of the line are on screen. So you can, as long as the end points are visible, you can actually click on that, and that's your way of adjusting that line if you need to. Okay, if you click off the line's no longer selected. If you need to select the line, I'm just going to click on it, and the endpoints will reappear, so you will know when the line is selected. Horizontal lines, so that you can do a horizontal line very, very easily, very quickly. You just hold down Shift, single click on the chart, and there's a horizontal line extending into the future. And vertical lines, you just hold down Shift and Control, single click on the screen, there's your vertical line. Okay. Now this chart is starting to look a bit cluttered, so what I'm going to do, select this horizontal line, and I'm going to delete it. So you've got two ways of doing that. You either hit the delete key on your keyboards, or hit the delete button, which is along the top of the display. So something I haven't actually mentioned, so there's your standard chart buttons along the top of the display. As soon as you select a line, you can see those buttons change. So these are now your drawing buttons, so to speak. And there you go, I can delete. One more thing to help you with your lines. You can actually take a line. I'm going to position it down here, right near the price action. Actually, I'm just going to zoom in on that. That'll make a bit more sense. Here we go. Right, so I can actually take that line and position it somewhere near the price action. So now, let's say this line is significant to me. This is a reflection of a price level. And I want to know about it when the share price breaches this price level. So all you do, once you've got the line on screen, you can right click, you'll see a menu appear. This is a little different because I'm on a Mac, so I'm just going to do it a slightly different way. I'm going to go to the options menu at the top, and there you go, set line alarm. As soon as you click on that, there's a little bell symbol on the line, so you know that's a line alarm, and as soon as the price action falls and breaches that line, you're going to know about it. You're going to get a notification. Okay, that's going to appear within this environment. So I've just toggled that on just so you can get a sense for where that would actually appear on your screen. So if you add a number of line alarms across a number of different price charts, you're going to want an environment within which you can manage your alarms, be aware of which ones you've created and so on. You've got that in SharePad, you've got the alarms view, okay? So I'm just going to split the screen so I can make this green view a bit larger. All I want to do on here is show you the alarms environment. And then at the moment this is alarms for current shares. So this would be an environment for creating alarms, but if you look at alarms for all, this is going to be your record of all the alarms you've switched on in the program or in the platform. So I did mention you'd get the notifications on screen. If you want to take that a step further and receive notifications via email, all you need to do, turn on your email button on the alarm, and that way when it triggers you're going to know about it because it's going to hit your inbox. Okay. Great. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to cover are the additional charts or the additional plots on the chart. I'll use a sensible example here. So we'll look at two retailers that do a similar thing. We'll look at Sainsbury, there it is. That's our 1 year chart of Sainsbury. Okay, we've still got those moving averages on there, that's fine. So I want to add an additional plot because I want to understand how Sainsbury's has performed in comparison to Tesco. So the way I'll do that, I'll go to the add menu at the top of the chart, and there you go, fifth item down is additional graph, sector, nav, etc. But essentially additional graph. Okay, so this is the dialog you'll see. I want a new additional chart. There's a few options on there, but for the time being, I just want an additional share or index. Clicking on create takes you to something that should be somewhat familiar. This is the find a share dialog that appears all the time. So I'll just type Tesco. There you go, I found it. And I'm going to choose a different color. I just want something that really stands out, something quite vibrant. And I'm just going to OK that. Okay, so we're looking at a 1 year chart, Sainsbury's versus Tesco. Just bear in mind this additional plot will be a relative performance, so they'll start at the same level on the left side, and then this movement is based on percentage performance. So we know over the last rolling 1 year, Sainsbury's has performed better than Tesco. Okay. So something I'm going to do just to help understand that is put the percentage scale on screen. You can see at the moment there isn't actually a scale on the left of this particular chart. I'm just going to go to design. I'm going to go to axes. And there you go, left y-axis is currently set to none. Let me put a percentage scale on there, starting at 0%. Okay, so you can see both plots start at 0% level and then extend forward. Sainsbury's is up over 30%, Tesco is down, I'd estimate around 5-6%, something like that. Okay. Something to be aware of is you've actually added this benchmark, this Tesco plot, to the chart setting. So what that means is if you switch to any other company, you're still going to be benchmarking against Tesco. Okay. So something you can do instead, if the need arises, let's go back to Sainsbury's. When you're adding the additional plot, let's just hide the existing one. We provide an option to do it on a paired basis, so paired sharer index. So what that means is if I add a plot of Tesco again, let's say, so I'm deliberately doing that in a different colour. That is specifically paired with Sainsbury's, so if you switch to different companies, you're not going to see that Tesco benchmark on there. Okay. If benchmarking is something you're going to do quite a lot, then you've got some pre-built designs or chart settings in SharePad that will do a lot of that work for you. So you've actually got a setting menu beneath the charts. That's going to be your quick way of accessing your different settings. So these are the defaults that come with a SharePad out of the box, so to speak. One of which is sector comparison. So this is just a different setting, which is a different chart design. And you can see this does a bit of benchmarking for you. So you'll get the relevant sector index plotted in the dark red, and the FTSE 100 index plotted in the pink. So you can immediately see that Sainsbury's is outperforming both its sector and the FTSE 100 market over this 1 year time frame. Okay. So that's always going to be a relative performance. Just to demonstrate the point, if I look at, let's say, a 1 month chart, you can see it always rebases at that 0% level on the left margin. So over the 1 month, it's a bit of a different comparison. Sainsbury's is actually underperforming the sector over the month, underperforming the FTSE 100 market over that 1 month. Let's just put that back. Another useful additional chart is the NAV. So this is going to be specific to investment trusts. Let's go for Scottish Mortgage, which is obviously one of the largest investment trusts and it's on the FTSE 100 market. Here we go. And the setting you're going to use is funds, ITs and ETFs. There you go. And this is going to be quite handy because you've got the plot of the share price, but in addition you've got this orange plot, and you can see that's the net asset value. Okay. So you can understand and see where the price is at a discount to NAV or where it's at a premium to NAV. Okay, so that's a useful additional plot to look at specifically for investment trusts. Multigraph is a very fast way of comparing up to 16 different companies. So I'm going to run through that now with you. First of all, I'm going to take us back to the buy and hold setting because that's the one we've been using most of the time. So at the moment on the list, we've got FTSE 100 companies, but that list could display any market in the product. It could actually display obviously one of your own portfolios or watch lists. But if you ever want to compare, as I say, up to 16 instruments, it's very easy to do. You're just going to hold down Control, and that's your way of selecting. Hold on, I'm on a Mac, so it's not Control, bear with me. But for all you PC users, it will be Control. There we go. So I'm holding down the Control equivalent and selecting a few different companies. You'll know they're selected because obviously they're highlighted. Right click on screen. Oh, I'm on a Mac. I don't know if that's gonna. Yeah, so I've right clicked on the screen. There's my menu, and there's the multi-graph option. And then you'll get an immediate plot of all 6 companies, well 6 in this case, so I've selected 6. You can see how they've performed over that 1 year time frame or any time frame of your choosing. To exit the multi-graph, you've got your button on the bottom left of the chart display, and that will take you back. Okay. Right, so next I'm going to move on to indicators. SharePad offers a large number of indicators, about 40 available via the indicators button above your chart. Okay, and you're just going to use the drop down menu if you ever want to add any other indicators to your display. So I'm going to add the average true range. So actually I added that earlier today, so I'm just going to delete it so I can treat it and demonstrate it in the way that you will see this if you're new to SharePad. So let me just let me just start that again. So I'm going to indicators above the chart. I'm using the drop down and I'm going to average true range. Okay. And that's just going to use the arbitrary default in the program, which is a 14 period. And there it is, it's plotted beneath the chart. So I've opted to demonstrate average true range, but in the Q&A at the end of this webinar, I'll be happy to look at other indicators if you want to. This is actually quite an interesting indicator. I feel as though it can be put to good use. Certainly if you're trading or spread betting, because it looks at the absolute value of the largest movement in a day. It's volatility focused, not direction focused. And it should help you if you've got a certain amount of money that you want to, let's say, I don't know, yeah, let's use the word risk, a certain amount of money you'd like to risk. Or if you've got an understanding of the typical sort of movement on that share price, it gives you an idea of how much you could put at stake. So let's use a specific example. I'm going to look at Flutter just because I was looking at that one earlier today. And that's got an ATR in the region of around 3.5. I'm approximating there, obviously. So let's say the amount I'm willing to put at risk is £50. I would do £50 divided by 3.5, which is the ATR. I've got a figure of around 14 in mind. Can you help me with that, Josh? £50 divided by 3.5. About 14, is it? Yeah, about 14.28. Let me just use the 2 decimal places there. So that means I could put down a stake of £14.28 per point, and based on that expected movement, and we're obviously talking statistically here because we're just running it off the data, the most we would expect to win or lose on the market would be around £50. So it's going to be a nice tool to help you with managing your risk, I'd say. And then I'll move on to the chart settings. So I've left this till the end. Everything I've done in terms of adding moving averages, in terms of colouring the candles, it's unique to the setting, okay? So the buy and hold setting, which we're on at the moment. This is significant because you're going to switch to different settings. You're going to see a chart that looks very different. The idea is all of these settings can be customized. So you would end up with a collection of chart settings, each set up to perform perhaps a different task, but you've got a very fast way of chopping and changing between your different setups. You're not limited to just the settings that appear in the menu. You can actually create new ones. You can copy existing settings. That's going to be quite neat if you want to use an existing setting as your starting point to then apply further customization, but retaining that original. So, you know, for example, I'll copy the buy and hold setting. I'll call that my buy and hold copy. And then in the menu you'll see I've now got two settings. They're identical at the moment, but I can now customize one. The other one stays as is. Don't worry if you find you've messed around with the settings, you're not happy, you just want to get back to where they were before, you're just going to click on Restore Settings to Defaults. You can click on that safely. That will just take you to this environment where you can reset any of the built-in settings that have been modified, and you've got a fast way of deleting the settings you've created yourself. Great, that's everything I wanted to cover, but I'm very, very open to questions, so please let me know if you want to ask anything. So the question from Ian, I missed, so you want to get the price data to the right hand side to appear in the right margin, I suspect. So you can see I've got the latest price appearing in the right margin. Yes, okay, I understand. Okay, Ian. Yeah. So I'm going to start from the beginning there. So this is what we would call a default layout in SharePad. So that gives you a blue view and a green view. And obviously the green view is interchangeable. At the moment I have a chart on that green view. If you go to your layout menu, which is located on the top right of your display, you can click on add a new layout. So what I've done there is I've opted for a layout that supports two linked green views. Here we go. So this one here will give you a list view and then two green views, all of which are linked together. The significance of that is they will always show the same share within each of those views. Okay, so this is the three linked in its default state. Clicking into one of those green views gives you access to the green buttons. So what I had done there, Ian, is I popped the prices view into that specific green view, and I've just adjusted it because I don't need it to take up a lot of the screen. And then I adjusted the chart as well. So that was my starting point. Any other questions? Can you plot a 50-day EMA on a 15-minute chart? No, actually, you can't. When you're on a 15-minute chart, the moving average will be based on, I have to zoom in to actually see 15-minute candlesticks. There we go. So a 50 period moving average, let's just zoom in a bit more, would be based on 50 periods, each of which are 15 minutes in length. So it's actually 50 15-minute period moving average, if that makes sense. Otherwise, if you're on the daily chart, then a 50 period moving average would be a 50-day moving average. Okay. I do not have another webinar on financial charts, but I haven't actually decided what my next webinar will be, and I'll be happy to cover that one. Is it possible to calculate the annual percentage change of a free draw line on a chart? Pretty sure that's possible. So Tim, what I'm going to do, exactly what I did earlier, I'm going to hold down Shift, I'm going to draw a line, and then I've got my options at the top. So I can get a percentage change on there, and that's pretty straightforward. That's just a percentage change from point A to point B. Alternatively, you can have the, let me turn that one on, the annual percentage change. Okay, so I've actually got them both on there now. Let me just turn the, there you go. So that's your annualized percentage change based on that line I've just drawn. Okay. How do I set an alarm for a new company meeting a specified screen? Is this a, John, is this a charting question? Or is this a filtering question? What sort of screen do you mean by that? I'll be happy to answer that. Well, I'll briefly cover that because I think that's only fair. If you want to run filters on the market, first of all, there is actually a separate webinar for that. It's already on our YouTube channel, and I do recommend watching it if you haven't seen it yet. But all your filtering happens on the blue side. And there's your filter menu, and you click on Apply Filter, and that's going to be your way of accessing the filters you've already built. I'm not going to go into it in great detail because obviously I've covered this in a previous webinar, but from here you can create new filters and you can download existing pre-built filters from our library. Okay. If you have any specific questions around that, I'll be happy to speak to you on the phone, so just give me a call after the webinar. Yeah, sure. So how you can save the chart style for each chart. Yeah. So let me just delete this line to start with. Okay, so any changes you make, so for example, if I go into design, and I'm just going to make a change just for demonstration purposes, so I don't want green for my candles, I actually want blue, for example. There you go. That's going to be, well, it saves automatically because the system is cloud-based, so that just happens instantaneously. But it's specific to the setting you're using. So I've just gone into the setting menu beneath the chart. I know which setting I'm using because it's got a tick next to it. So I know that this setting is now going to show me blue candles, unless of course I decide to change that again in the future. But you know, I could go to buy and hold copy, and that's the one I made earlier, and that hasn't had that change applied, so that's still got the green candles. Okay. But yeah, you definitely want to make use of these different settings rather than go into the design menu every time you want to make little changes. Just make a number of settings, use create new, set all of the settings up exactly how you need them, and then you're just going to find that you can quickly chop and change between them. It's going to be the fastest way of working. Fib retracement, yeah, I can show a fib retracement, that's not a problem. So if I go to draw, so these are all your drawing tools. I'll just hover over, there you go, so that's your Fibonacci retracement. Really easy to use, you just click on it and then you can go onto the chart and you're just going to draw what's known as the control line. So I'm going to just do a demonstration Fibonacci retracement from this point to this point. There you go, so that sets my Fibonacci levels, starting from 0% up to 100%, with the other Fibonacci levels in between. This is where that scrolling I showed you earlier is quite useful. So if I use the up and down arrows to adjust that y-axis, see, I could start seeing some of those other Fibonacci levels, which obviously are much further away. Okay, see, that's quite extreme. You wouldn't, I don't know if you typically want to go that far away from the price action. Oop, double clicked to zoom to full history. Once that Fibonacci level is drawn, you can always select that control line, and that's going to show you the endpoints. So you're always going to be able to adjust that retracement if you need to. There you go, so perhaps covering a different range of price action. Okay, and then I'm seeing how that projects forwards. So these these Fibonacci levels are obviously very popular. and they will often form points of support and resistance. So if we look forwards in time, then we can perhaps observe that the price action is bouncing off some of these support and resistance levels. Okay. If you select the Fibonacci retracement, it is currently selected, then that's going to be a way of you accessing a few other options. So one of the things you can do on Fibonacci specifically is edit Fibonacci levels. So there's a whole bunch of numbers in here relating to the Fibonacci levels, but you could actually add some levels of your own. You just separate them by comma. So I'll just do one, for example. Let's just do one at 80 just for demonstration purposes. And there you go, there's an additional level at the 80% mark. And I'm just going to delete that from the chart for the time being. Any other questions there, Josh? Yeah, candlestick data on hover over. Thank you, Richard. That's a great question. So if I go to the design button at the bottom of the chart, I'm going to go to, oh, I've got to remind myself where this is. I'm pretty sure that's going to be on axes. No. Here we go. I found it. So design button at the bottom of your chart. Get yourself onto the style tab, and you want to include values, for example, OHLC. This is perfect. If you have a look at this, you can now hover over each bar and you're immediately going to see the OHLC data for each bar. So it's the equivalent of reading off the right hand side. And to be honest, I did this really for demo purposes to help you follow what I was covering, but this is going to be a much more sensible way of doing that. There you go, you're going to get that OHLC data immediately, and you can see which bar it is because it's very clearly highlighted for you. Okay. Great, any other questions? Oh, point and figure. I'm not going to be able to cover point and figure today, Phil. I'd need to do a bit of prep on that, to be honest. But send me an email or give me a call and I'll go through it with you one-on-one. If you change the share, it reverts to the old defaults. No, that shouldn't happen. This is my design, and it applies to the setting. So if you change share, like Anglo-American, for example, as long as you're on the same setting, you're going to have the same design. If you find the design's changing, that's going to be because the setting's changing. Any other questions? No? Great. Well, if you think of any questions you'd like to ask, feel free to get in touch with me or my support team, or our support team. Give us a call. I'm going to put the contact info on screen actually. Let's just scroll down. Here we go. So there's our support email address. Send us a quick email if you want to ask us something. We're around Monday to Friday, so pick up the phone, give us a call if you want. Or you can post in the chat room if that's what you prefer. You'll often get a helpful answer from a fellow SharePad user if we don't get to you first. Future webinars, so I've had a few ideas come in. I think point and figure is quite a detailed enough subject that it could be a webinar of its own. Something I've already considered is doing a point and figure webinar in future, and financial charts is a great suggestion. It's one I'd be very happy to do. Okay. Great, well I'll leave it there. As I say, get in touch if you need to ask anything. We're happy to help, and I look forward to seeing you all on the next webinar. Thank you, goodbye.